Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Rachel Martin. I'm a virtual English language fellow, and I'm so glad you're here for this month's RELO Andy's webinar. So today, our title is Keeping the Spark, Avoiding Burnout in Distance Learning. And I'm just really glad I get to talk with you about this topic. This is something not just during coronavirus time, but something that I have presented on for years, and I'm very passionate about. Teachers need to be healthy. We need to take care of ourselves in order to be effective with our students. So as we get started here, I would love to hear where you are watching from. So if you are joining us on Facebook Live, if you are joining us on YouTube, I just want to say welcome. If you want to post and tell us where you're watching, I am broadcasting to you from the state of Montana. So I was living in Lima, Peru until March, and now I'm back home in Montana. I put some pictures up there. As you might guess from the name, we have a lot of mountains here, but we also have some cities. I love this picture I took down here of a deer. We have lots of wildlife. But thank you so much for being here. Make sure you check in, say hi, share this with your friends. Oh, hi, Sarah from Peru. Glad to have you here. I see, we have more people joining us from Peru, from Morocco. Well, it's so good to have you all here. Okay, so today's topic, I just want to start out by saying that we are going to talk about teacher well-being, and I am not a medical professional in that field. I'm a teacher. I've worked as a teacher for quite a few years now, and then as a teacher trainer. So as we talk about this, if you are struggling with hopelessness or with self-harm, please seek professional help. And if you have the opportunity to talk to a mental health professional, I would encourage you to do so. It's not a sign of weakness. It doesn't even mean that things are seriously wrong in your life. It can be a way to strengthen yourself, to prevent problems, to get helpful strategies. So I just want to put that out there before we dive into any of these topics today. Let's see, I can say hello to Edison from Quito, Ecuador. Elva, oh, hi, Elva from Peru. Let's see, we have Nadine joining us from Argentina. Fantastic. Like I said, it's so good to have a wide group of people here today. Thank you for being here. So my title said avoiding burnout. And that might be a term that some people are not familiar with. What is burnout? What do I mean? Well, you can probably kind of picture that, if you're burning a candle and then you don't have any more light. But I really like this definition. I think this explains it really well. It says burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. Let's see, as I keep saying hello to some people here, Fanny from Cusco. We have people joining us from Bolivia. Looks like a couple of people from Bolivia there. Hello to those watching in Venezuela. If you've been teaching this year, in 2020, even if you weren't teaching, this has been a year where I'm sure many people have felt overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. There's a second part of this too. It says, as the stress continues, you begin to lose interest and motivation that led you to take on a certain role in the first place. So when we're talking about burnout for teachers, I know we're getting near the end of the school year for most of South America, and that stress, maybe it's been building. Maybe it's been taking a toll. And I worry about teachers. I know the motivation, the interest, you want to be there for your students. But many of my friends are right on the edge, kind of approaching burnout. So let's talk today about some of the causes. Sometimes, even when we can't find solutions, just talking about the reasons that we have stress, acknowledging them, understanding that they are happening to everyone around us and that they are outside of our control. It's not a weakness for the teacher. And then we're also I'm going to share with you some strategies, hopefully to build your resilience, okay? So let me ask you a question here. Oh, I love how many people are talking in the chat. Thank you so much for writing to us. Looks like we have Mohammed from Egypt. We have Christian from Iquitos, from Ayacucho. Oh, great to have you here today. So let me, I'm going to ask you a question here in a moment. But before I ask you that question, kind of what I just said about this has been kind of a vulnerable year for teachers. And I know many people don't like admitting that they're vulnerable, but we could call this a perfect storm of stress. So many different factors coming together to create the situation where burnout could happen. I mean, stress has been high for everyone, for general populations, between worrying about our health, worrying about finances, worrying about our loved ones, normal activities being restricted. But teachers are in a special place. I mean, you, as a teacher, you are always concerned with your students. As a teacher, you always maybe worry a little bit about your students. You have dozens of people, or for many of you, I know you have hundreds of students. So there are hundreds of people, extra people that you are concerned about this year, not just your own family and your neighbors and your extended family, but teachers are concerned about their students. Another thing going on, we've all been teachers have been asked to work in a new way. And on top of all of this, as teachers, you know how important your work is. So when things don't go well, I think teachers really take that stress inside and they worry and they're concerned because they know the importance of their role and they want to see their students be successful. So here's that question that I wanted to ask you. It's great to see so many people here active in the chat. I want you to think about what are some of the sources that are really draining you, that are causing stress in your life, taking your energy, your mental energy, your emotional energy. Maybe it's something I just had on that last slide, or maybe it's something completely different. What are the things that are making this year stressful? I know in my case, something is just as simple as keeping track of my schedule. You know, usually I would go to the place I'm working and my day would just go step by step by step. But now I feel like I'm always on my WhatsApp. I'm always trying to get here and there. Thank you for sharing, Hema. Too much screen time. Exactly. Your whole life seems like it's happening on a screen right now. Let's see. Yes, we need to develop how we're teaching nowadays. We're changing so many things. We're learning so many new strategies. Let's see. Also in the comments, we had just about, you know, having to wash hands and all these things that we're learning this year that are different than what we've been doing before. Edison is saying preparation time and the need to know that if what they're choosing for their class is okay. And I'm going to talk about that a bit more, about how we don't really have that feedback. The transition to virtual classes in general, equipment needs. Okay, so we're kind of making a list here. Let me share with you 4 things that I want to focus on today as we talk about this. So some of the reasons that might be draining you right now, maybe they fit into these categories. The uncertainty there. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yes. So one category I want to talk about today is the lack of feedback that teachers are having. The lack of control that we're all feeling, especially in our teaching and in our classrooms and in our contact with our students. Struggling to set boundaries. And kind of the burden of always trying to be positive. How do we manage our emotions as we're also trying to influence our students? So let's talk about this first one here. Let's talk a little bit about the lack of feedback. And as I was preparing my slides this week, I came across this tweet. So this is from Tom Rademacher. He was the Minnesota Teacher of the Year in 2014. And sometimes he says things really well, the way I wish I could say them. So he tweeted this week about the work reward balance is off. The effort impact balance is off. It's not that it's too much of the first so much as it's not enough of the second. So he's saying it's not from his perspective, it's not so much that teachers are having too much work to do or we're putting in too much effort. I mean, every teacher I know works really hard and always had. Teachers, I think, love to work really hard. But what he's highlighting is that the frustration, at least for him, and I can kind of share in this, is that you're not getting as much feeling of that you're making a difference, that there isn't as much feedback, there isn't as much of an impact because you don't see how your students are responding to the lessons. So that reward that we usually feel from watching our students succeed, at watching them increase their English levels, reach goals, it's disrupted right now. So we're putting in a lot of work and not getting as much reward out of it. So usually, teachers have a lot of interaction with their students. Even if you only see them for a little bit each week, you do get to have that face-to-face. You see how they're doing. So much of great teaching is adapting and responding. And I think most teachers get a lot of energy out of this. They feed off of the interaction. So, student successes, they motivate us, and their struggles, push us to do better. So let's put this in the current context. Are you getting much feedback from your students? Are you able to hear them improve? Are you able to see them improve? I know some teachers are able to, who are having face-to-face classrooms, but I also know for many other teachers, the reality is they're not in contact with their students very often. You're kind of sending your lessons out there and hoping something happens. I think Nellie just said it really well in the comments there. Poor connectivity is killing. Yes, it can be hard to build those relationships. Thank you, Sandra, with the students and with other teachers. Exactly. So what can we do within the realm of feedback? What are some strategies to kind of push back against this? Now that we know it's been disrupted, as we can recognize this as maybe one of the sources of stress, sources of teacher burnout, some of the things I would encourage you is that anytime you do find out about the impact that you have on a student, anytime you do get a chance to see or hear about the fact that your students are doing their assignments, that they are listening to some English, that they are trying to make progress, and they are making progress, celebrate it. Those things that we would think normally aren't a big deal, this is the time to keep track of them and to remember they are a big deal. I would even write them down. Personally, I've been keeping a list of things that went well. So many times there's things that are not going well, but when you have a success, when you have a moment that you can be really proud of, actually physically write it down. I recommend it. In the same way, make a list of things that you as a teacher are proud of doing. And I know most of the time I'm encouraging teachers to really focus on the outcomes of their students. But right now, if you can't see the outcomes, you can still see what you're doing and the effort you're putting in. Did you create a new speaking lesson? Did you manage to call 4 students, 5 students? Did you send something into a WhatsApp group? Whatever those things are that you are doing as a teacher, be proud of them and keep track of it. Sometimes I think teachers are a little too humble. We don't take the time to realize everything that we're doing, and it's so much. Give yourself some credit for it. And, if you can't have feedback from your students, you can kind of create some of that feedback from yourself, getting feedback from another teacher. Find someone that you could have maybe a weekly check-in. It's Friday. We're going to share something good that's happened this week. Teachers always need other teachers. So finding creative ways to build those relationships this year, I think, is key. So let's talk about this next category here, which is lack of control. And Jesus's comment there goes right with it. We can't control our students' connectivity. We can't control whether they do their work. We're not there in the room to go stand kind of next to them and use proximity or to influence them in some of the ways we normally would. So these things that I'm seeing so many of them come up here in the chat, these frustrations related to technology and connectivity, they are outside of the things that we can do. But what can we do? What can we do in this area? I think the first step is to really be honest about what we can control and influence and keep innovating. So just because there was a barrier a month ago, 2 months ago, there might be a new way to reach students now. Everyone has been in this now for about 6 months, a little bit more than 6 months. The things that didn't work in June, maybe they will work now, maybe they won't. But really looking at this is something I can control or this is something I cannot control can be very freeing. I think it's difficult because as teachers, we've been taught to take responsibility for our students' progress, to really care a lot. And that's what makes a great teacher. But it can also really lead to burnout when there are things you can't affect. So let's talk about the next category here. Another source that is leading teachers to feel exhausted, to be on the edge of burnout, is setting the boundaries between work and home, personal life, reaching out to all of our students, and also taking care of our own families. I think, like I said before, teachers like to work hard. Every teacher I know works very hard, and we're used to bringing work home with us, but this is a new extreme. And as many people are in very small physical spaces with a lot of other people, as your own children are around, this can lead to a lot of difficulties with setting boundaries. When are you on work? When are you off work? I would love to highlight this comment here from Jesus. He says, perseverance, resilience, and creativity are key. Some of my favorite words. Don't give up and keep finding creative ways to do this. Well, what do some of them look like? I feel like we've been using a lot of creativity. All of us have this year. Well, being realistic in the scheduling. I think figuring out how to set a rotation, not being overwhelmed by the large numbers or the no responses, but I'm going to try this for an hour. I'm going to try this for 2 hours. I'm going to reach out to this group every 3 days or every 4 days, coming up with a schedule that is going to work, that you don't feel guilty about, because you're not doing any good if you carry around a sense of, I should be doing better, I should do more. If you are living with other people, trying to rally some family support, and this can be so challenging. I think my husband knows more about what I do now than he has ever known. We've been married for 13 years, and he somewhat knows what my job is now. We've set up little agreements about he sends me a WhatsApp message before he goes out to the store if I'm in a class or if I'm teaching. Making sure we know each other's schedules so that we can coordinate who's using the internet or who has a quiet room. But this can be so hard, especially if you're negotiating with other people. Who's watching your children during this hour? Can you trade this responsibility? As we're being creative about everything else, I would encourage you, and I hope maybe there's a family member listening over your shoulder too, to be creative with having family support for teachers. But in the end, when we're setting boundaries, when we're talking about the workload this year, doing something is better than nothing. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I really like things to be completely correct and in the right order, color-coded and nice and neat. But sometimes just putting something out there, giving it a try, and not feeling guilty, not beating myself up because it wasn't perfect, is another boundary that I have had to set this year. Okay, so far we've covered 3 of those kind of contributing causes to teacher burnout. The lack of feedback, because we don't have those natural interactions. Lack of control, because there are so many things we can't influence this year. and then struggling to set boundaries. Oh, I really like this comment I just saw pop up from Nadine about establishing realistic, smaller goals. Setting smaller goals and then checking them off rather than setting something really big for the end and then struggling to get there, maybe never getting there. It's a great piece of advice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So our fourth kind of contributing cause, and this one almost seems counterintuitive, but trying to be positive all the time, always being happy and the encouraging person. I mean, teachers want to do that. We know we have a big influence on how our students feel about learning. When you create that positive atmosphere, it can make a big difference. But it can also be exhausting to be the only person who feels like you're kind of dragging it along, pulling everyone along with you. So what can a healthy balance look like this year? Well, I think it's okay for teachers to be vulnerable in front of their students. It's okay for my students to know that not every day is perfect. My addition to that, though, is that teachers shouldn't be seeking emotional support from their students. That support goes one way. As a teacher, I'm here to support my students. They're not here to get me through my bad days. But I can model for them. I can show my students something I've always liked to teach my students is that it's okay to have really hard things and it's okay to celebrate really great things. I'm going to share a quote with you. So you can chuckle a little bit because the quote comes from a TV show, but I have had this quote in almost every single classroom that I've taught in. I always put it up there and we talk about it. And this year it feels even more true than any year that I put this in my classroom before. So it says, the way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa, the bad things don't always spoil the good things and make them unimportant. So modeling for students and teaching students that they can have two different piles here. These are things that are really hard and you see them and they're real and no one is trying to diminish that. And then in the other pile, you can have really good things. What were small victories, things you can celebrate? And the fact that there's really hard things and really good things, it's not a conflict. It's not a contradiction. I have to remind myself that as a teacher, and I always try and share that with my students as well. So now that we've talked about kind of 4 of the causes for teacher burnout, some of the things that might be draining or dragging on you, let's talk about some strategies for staying resilient. What are some ways that you can stay strong this year? And the 3 that I'd like to share with you is to remember your why, build community, and narrate your own story. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question. Are you guys ready? Are you ready to respond in the chat? This one's going to take just a little bit of thinking here, but I would like to know in just 1 or 2 sentences, if you can share, why did you become a teacher? Think back. What are the things that led you into teaching? I know many people went into teaching because they had a parent who was a teacher and they grew up admiring that and seeing the impact that it could have on students. You know, other people go into teaching because they believe in the power of education, to change people's lives, to give their students more opportunities, to help their students choose what they want to do in their life. Oh, I see someone there says that they have their why actually posted above their laptop. What a great strategy to put it physically there where you're spending so much of your time. There are people who became, there we have, always admired my teachers. Oh, and then on the other hand, I wanted not to be like some of my own teachers. Ooh, you can learn from great examples and you can learn from examples of what you don't want to do. And I can imagine, you probably went into teaching to encourage your students. If you're here, there's a great one. I loved helping others to grow. Whatever your reason was, hang on to that. And maybe there's a way to be achieving that reason, achieving that purpose, that goal this year. You can still help your students grow in some ways. You can still model positivity. Education can be part of breaking the cycle of poverty, and you can help your students still access education and not lose this year. But maybe it's been really hard to achieve your why, especially if you're not getting much feedback, especially if it's hard to reach your students. I really want to encourage you to hang on to that why for this year, but also for next year, for the year after. Remembering your why is about remembering your why now, but it's also about remembering your reason for the future. There's a great reason there, to help people who really need it, to contribute to your country. Eventually, the circumstances will change and you'll be living out your purpose, your reason, again, in a different way. Maybe closer to what you were doing last year, closer to how you expected to do it. Don't lose track of the power of that goal that's motivating you. So I want to kind of move into my second strategy here. So my second strategy, beyond remembering what your reason for being a teacher is to build community. And when I say community, I really mean a community of other teachers, because teachers need other teachers. You'll never convince me otherwise. Other teachers are the only ones who really understand some of the crazy things that have happened in the classroom, some of the struggles, some of the challenges. Having other teachers around you can, help you problem solve practically, but it also, I think, gives a big emotional boost. So I would encourage you, make sure you're keeping in touch with other teachers right now. And when we finish this webinar at the very end, I have an invitation for you. Actually, I have two invitations for you, but I have an invitation for you on how you can network with, how you can join with some other teachers. We have an event coming up. But make sure that there are people who are, encouraging you. It's great to be honest with your struggles, but try not to get into that spiral of teachers who are complaining and just feeling like they can't make a difference. You know you can make a difference, and you know you will continue to make a difference in the future. So being around other people who have that same sense of purpose. And I say being around, but being around right now can be a phone call. Being around can be a WhatsApp message. I have maybe 3 or 4 other teachers who are the people I always WhatsApp when I'm having a bad day. Even if I don't tell them anything about my bad day, they're my teacher support. So whatever that looks like, make sure you're being intentional. Don't cut yourself off, even if you aren't in the classroom this year. I know I have several friends that in the chaos that happened in March and in April, they're not teaching this year, but they've stayed connected with other teachers. And I think that's been very powerful for their well-being. Okay, so the third and final point I have here for strategies to kind of increase your own resilience is to think about how you're going to tell the story of this year, to be able to narrate, to be able to explain what happened with you as the main character. And we could spend hours talking about this, but I really believe in the power of storytelling. So even if you don't share this story with someone else, how do you talk about it for yourself? Is it a story of defeat, of just this went wrong and that went wrong and I couldn't do any better? Or can you write a story where you are the main character? And I don't mean write as in go create a fiction, but just when you think of this in your head, when you talk about it to yourself, when you eventually talk about it to someone else, think of the challenges you faced. Think of the steps you took to overcome them. Think of, even if they were small things, what are your successes, and make that the point of the story. What were the lessons learned? Eventually you will tell this, and there's a lot of power in how you do that. So just recapping kind of those 3 things to remember your why, which I loved how much I saw in the comments there. We could only highlight some of them, but it looked like there were a lot of teachers who feel very passionately about why they're a teacher. That's why you're here. Hang on to that. Building community, sharing with other teachers, and shaping a story. Now, there's a great comment there. We don't want to talk about 2020. That can be one strategy, and I can respect that. But sometimes I think it helps to talk about things, and not even necessarily to other people, but inside when you reflect on it. If you journal, if you do something to think about what did you do this school year, be ready to make yourself the main character in your own story. How do you have that rising action, falling action? There's the macro story, there's the big story of what's going on in the world and in your country. But then there's also the story of what's going on in your life and your classroom. So I promised you that I would invite you to a couple different ways that you can connect with other educators. So first thing I want to do is just invite anyone who's interested to come to a post-webinar discussion group. We'll hold it tomorrow, starting at the same time that the webinar started today. So that's at 2 p.m. Lima time. And there's going to be a link on the RELO Andy's Facebook page. It'll go up in a couple of minutes. And you need to sign up if you want to come to that discussion group. I hope a few of you can join me. We'll keep it a pretty small group, maybe 15 people maximum. But we've been doing these for the last couple of webinars. And it's just nice to have another format where we can talk. We'll use Zoom. If you'd like to join me tomorrow, please look for that link. And now something else is kind of exciting. I'm pretty happy to share this one with you. Coming up in October, that first weekend in October, Friday, October 2nd, and Saturday, October 3rd, RELO Andy's is hosting with Organization Change. We're hosting a regional virtual conference for English teachers. We're putting on a conference. We have more than 30 presenters at this point, and the tickets are completely free. I put this picture on here. I've been meeting with the presenters this last week, working with them to make sure they're ready, they're prepared to present to you. And we've really enjoyed getting together and talking and just hearing where people are at, what their projects have been this year, what their successes have been. So we've been building a little community of presenters. But on October 2nd and October 3rd, we really hope that you can come and join us and be part of a larger community. As I said, there's going to be 30 plus presenters. There's going to be some opportunities for networking. We're using a platform that's actually really cool where you can talk to or chat with other teachers who are there. There's going to be an expo hall, and the tickets are free. You just need to make sure you're signing up. So there is a Facebook event that you can find off of the RELO Andy's Facebook page, or you can go to the website that I've listed right there and make sure you're registering. So as we just have a couple more minutes here today, I'm actually going to invite one of my dear colleagues here. I'd like to invite Karina Garcia from the RELO Andy's office here. She's a teacher. She supports teachers. And we want to open it up to some questions here. So I think we can take the slides down at this point. And if anyone has some questions or things they want to talk about this topic here, as I've been asking you questions, what's your reason for teaching? What's keeping you going? If you have advice you would share with other teachers. Oh, I see some people are putting their information here in the chat. You can't register for the conference just by putting it in the chat here. Make sure you visit the website so that you can register there. All right, so Karina, I'm just wondering, what would you like to tell teachers if you were giving some teachers advice right now to encourage them? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yes, Rachel, thank you for being today with us. And it's a very interesting topic that you are presenting. I think that teachers are enjoying. And one thing that we need to, we would like the teachers to remember today that they are essential workers, the same as health workers, because they are in the front line working with the students, supporting parents. And some advice that I would like to provide to the teachers is that take your plan to attend self-care too. At the end of the day, you could listen to your favorite music, eat the things that you like eating, or just as someone said, like RELO Sandra mentioned in the chat, she said that it's a good idea to provide or to have screenshots of good comments that you saw during the day from your parents, from your students, in order to remind you that you are doing a great job. And someone also mentioned in the chat that it's very important to meet with your colleagues to share and offer mutual support, because this will build a sense of belonging and cohesiveness as well, and also as a protective factor to decrease stress and increase self-efficacy. So no one was prepared for fully remote teaching, and think that everything is over. You teachers, you will be prepared with or equipped with new skills that will contribute to your professional expertise, taking all these difficult times from this very positive side. And you teachers, you are fortunate to have a job that gives you the opportunity to serve others and give them opportunities to grow your students, and you are changing the world. You are doing a great job, and the RELO Andes team, we are really fortunate to work with you, and we feel really proud of what English teachers are doing in our region, in Peru, and all over the world.
Thank you so much for those words of encouragement, Karina. So I want to. Sorry.
Yes, Rachel, I just want to mention one question that was proposed by Mohammed Wabang in the chat. And he asks if you think that students lost the enthusiasm of going back to school, and if they will depend on online sessions all the time.
I mean, I do know some students who are really appreciating online sessions, and I think that we need to be careful not to assume that every student is eager to go back to school. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from that, maybe to figure out why do students, and not most students, but some students, why would they prefer not to be in school? Is there something about the environment or something about the means of communication? So I think we can learn from that and hopefully make in-person schools better for those students. But in general, I'm pretty sure most students are pretty excited to go back. From what I hear from students, from what I hear from my friends who have kids, I don't think that's something I'm too worried about. They'll be very happy to see their friends, to see their classmates. When that happens, I think it'll be quite a transition, but it'll be a good transition.
I agree with you, Rachel. I agree with you.
I saw another question come up there while I was talking about what are some things people are doing to balance and to take care of themselves. I loved your mention there of how important self-care is, Karina. I don't know, could you share maybe just one or two things that you've been doing?
The two things that I have been doing these days, it is I listen to my favorite music at the end of the day. I stop checking WhatsApp messages, because sometimes, as you mentioned, we feel that we are through WhatsApp messages the whole day, but sometimes I take my time to read what I like, to do something completely different, and also listen to my favorite music that makes me feel really happy. And also, it's great to see, as someone mentioned, as RELO Sandra mentioned also, to see all the good comments and remember at the end of the day that good comments you received about the work you do from your colleagues, from your bosses, or in the case of teachers, from their students. And also, I always think that my job gives me the opportunity to serve others about the programs that we have at the U.S. Embassy, like the Access program, like the Fellows program, like you doing the great job you are doing as a fellow. So these things make me feel really enthusiastic and positive about my job.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I guess I'll just add on there a couple of the things I personally have been doing. I actually took up a new hobby, or it's not quite a new hobby. It was something I had done as a child. I've been working on needlepoint stitching because I wanted something that was not connected to a computer. And I realized too many of my hobbies, nothing wrong with watching TV and stuff, but it all involves screens. So I work to find a hobby that isn't by hand and isn't on a screen.
That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing, Rachel.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like we had an observation here about how school is not just a place for learning, but it's a place where students interact and catch up with their peers. And I think that's maybe a little bit in response to if they would lose that enthusiasm for going back. But it's also something, you know, as much as possible. I know a lot of teachers have been trying to facilitate that digitally or at a distance. I think we've really all come to see the important place that schools hold in our community for learning, for socializing, for helping parents manage all the different responsibilities in their life. So as you mentioned before, teachers have a huge part to play in their communities. And not forgetting, holding on to that importance, not forgetting it.
Exactly.
Oh, it looks like Edison says he's doing some woodworking. So there's a hobby that's, you know, similar, different medium, but also working with your hands can be such a great way to decrease stress. Oh, Blanca says she crochets. Fantastic. Look at this. All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up now. I want to thank everyone for joining us again. And please make sure you're checking the RELO Andy's Facebook page for the link if you want to join me for the discussion group tomorrow. And make sure you are signing up for the Re-Evolution Conference. We are so excited about that. It's just a couple of weeks away. And I look forward to seeing all of you there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye.